Hi, how you doing? And welcome back to another video on the channel. What we have for you today is a bit of a different video. We've got our annual Premier League predictions video. So we're going to predict where we think each team's going to finish in the league table, and you can probably disagree with me in the comments and comment with your own league table where you think, we've got anything majorly wrong or whether you think we've got something correct. Let us know. Please do like and subscribe if you're new. We normally just do Fantasy League content as well, so if you want to keep up with that all of this season, that would be awesome as well. We're a small channel trying to grow, so if you can help with that, it's always appreciated. Let's take a look at the league table, and how it's going to work is we're going to start with 11th and work our way down to the bottom. Then we're going to go back to 10th and work our way up to the top. So we're going to start with 11th, and I'm going to go with Everton. I think I predicted them to finish mid-table last season. They didn't do quite as well as I'd have thought they would have done, so I'm kind of going for them again. I think they've had another year of Sean Dyche, and they're a really solid team, to be honest. It's just whether they can score enough. I think they'll start getting it together more and more. They're probably going to be on the way up after sort of circling around the relegation zone for a few seasons. 12th, we're going to go with Brighton. I'm not that keen on Brighton this season. I think 12th is like a maximum. I think it could be anywhere. Like a lot of these teams in this sort of 12th down to 16th positions are probably only separated by about 4 points at the end of the season anyway. So they can all, interchange between. But Brighton, I don't really see they've made that many good moves. There's usually, some Premier League teams that have been in the league for a few seasons and they don't quite strengthen. And eventually they kind of get sucked into relegation zone. I don't really see that as much for Brighton. But there's been, a bit of up and down over recent times with them, and the form's been slightly inconsistent. Next up, we've got Wolves. Now, I actually did tip Wolves to get relegated last season, and they didn't, and they probably will this season because I've predicted them to finish 13th. I do think they're a fairly solid outfit. I know they've lost players like Max Kilman as well, so we'll wait and see how that impacts them. But they are one of those teams that's quite consistent. But again, I wouldn't be surprised if they finished a bit lower than this one. Up next, we've got Brentford. Now, I don't really see Brentford doing that well this season. I know they've got a very good home record, a terrible away record, typically in the Premier League. But again, they've been in the league for a few seasons now, and sometimes these teams, they kind of reach their ceiling and they sort of get a bit impatient. They feel like they should be challenging for Europe, whereas in reality, they shouldn't be challenging for Europe. They should just be happy with being a mid-table Premier League team. So they have the potential to kind of, get a bit out of that and sort of start slipping down the league table. Next up, we got Nottingham Forest. I'm a big fan of Nottingham Forest. I think they've done really well. I was really glad they stayed in the Premier League that season when they came up and all the players were on loan and ran out of contract, and they had to kind of get a squad together, and then they've built on that. I do like them as a team, and I would like them to stay up. 15th is probably as good as they can expect, to be honest. They'll be lucky to not be in a relegation battle this season. Next up, we've got Fulham, and Fulham are one of my favourite teams. And I'm a bit gutted to have to put them this low down. I know a lot of people in Fantasy League are quite high up on Fulham players. I am too, but I just think that the signing players like Smith Rowe, who he could be great, and I hope he is great. But I think sometimes you've got teams who are that mid to low table, and they sign players like Smith Rowe, who hasn't really played much in the season, and they put all their eggs in that basket. And if they don't perform, they've got really no backup plan, and that's when they start struggling. So I would love to see Fulham higher up the table, but I'm going for 16th. 17th, we've got Southampton. Now, as a team, along with Leicester, who came straight back up into the Premier League, they've kind of got a lot of the players that they had a couple of seasons ago. Obviously, they've not got Ward-Prowse and players like that anymore, but they have pretty much got a similar squad. I think you could interchange them and Leicester City, who I've got in 18th, as to which one could get relegated. Normally, we will see like a bit of a big gap between the Premiership or Premier League and the Championship teams, but because they're in the league so recently, I kind of see that gap being a bit smaller than it was last season. I still think those promoted teams will struggle just because that's kind of how it goes, isn't it? So you could swap Leicester City and Southampton around in the places that I've got them in. Next up, we've got Bournemouth. They've just got rid of Solanke. I'm not too sure whether it's going to leave them with enough time to get a proper replacement, especially now all the other teams know that they've got 65 million in the bank. They're going to, any transfer targets that they had, they're going to add a few more million onto them, aren't they, now they know they've got the cash. So for me, I think they would have preferred to have done that transfer business before selling Solanke and then got someone in the squad, because they must have known he was going. There's obviously been something behind the scenes that's not quite worked out for them. I do think that their time is up in the Premier League. I know they had quite a good run last season. I just think they just not got it in them to sustain Premier League status. Bottom of the league, we've got Ipswich, and I was correct last season when I said Sheffield United would finish bottom because I saw them in pre-season live, and you could see they just weren't cutting it. I kind of think Ipswich are probably going to be this season's Sheffield United. I do worry slightly that they might be on for a record low points tally in the Premier League. I obviously hope that's not the case, but I just think they've maybe come up a little bit too soon and they've maybe not strengthened as much as they should have done. And I think they'll be quite happy with a season in the Premier League. Go back down again, get the parachute payments and sort of build a more solid squad to have another challenge in the Championship. And then when they come in the Premier League again, can have a really good crack at it with a more solid squad. So 10th we've got West Ham. And for me, this is a baseline for West Ham. I think anything lower than 10th, I just don't see happening. I think they've bought really well in the transfer market. And I think 10th is the minimum place. Could they finish as high as 6th? Maybe, but we've got quite a lot of big teams and teams that would be expecting to finish into Europe. I think it might be a season too soon for West Ham. Could definitely see them finishing 8th though, and then looking to build on that in the next season past this one. 9th, we've got Crystal Palace. Usually we do have teams that finish the season quite well and then they continue that form into the next season. This could be with Crystal Palace. Now, Glasner's had a full pre-season with them, which he didn't have last season. And I know there's a bit of umming and ahhing about which players are going to stay, which players are going to go. I do think that even if someone like Gahey goes, he actually only played once for Glasner last season, and that was in midfield. So the defence is quite set as it is, and they are very underrated as a team. 9th, I think, is a really good position for them. I don't see them finishing any higher than 9th. They're one of those teams that you could see finishing 9th, 10th, 11th or 12th. Any of those places, I think they're in for a solid season. 8th is Chelsea. Now, Chelsea, we just don't know what's going on there. I think they don't quite know what's going on there. And then I think they finished like 11th last season, didn't they? But for me, I think they're going to finish about 8th, just outside the European places. A lot of young players, they're still trying to work it out. They're trying to trim the squad down. Like, the dressing room must just be chaos there. And there's not going to be that harmony and that togetherness that they're going to need to come into big games or even, tough away games and get the consistent results. So it's 8th place for me. 7th, I've got Aston Villa. Now, finishing in Champions League last season, I don't think it'll take its toll on them. I just think it's hard and they've made some good decisions in the transfer market, but they've also lost some players as well. Someone like Douglas Luiz could have an impact, his departure, and it's hard to maintain consistent top 4 finishes in the Premier League. So I think they're probably going to have a little dip off from last season. Hopefully they'll do well in the Champions League and have a good run in that. And maybe, they might end up saying, oh, you know what, let's finish 8th and not get European football next season and then focus on the Premier League, try and get 4th again. But I think that 7th, 8th position for Aston Villa is quite realistic for them. 6th, we've got Spurs. Now, are they a one-trick pony? They started to get found out a little bit with the tactics towards the end of last season and couldn't quite get the results that they wanted to. Started off really well. I'll be interested to see how Solanke fits in. Having someone who's used to the league coming in, he'll take a lot less time to settle than someone who's played in a league abroad and trying to move the whole life over to England. So he should hit the ground running. And they say he plays how they want to play. So in theory, it should be a match made in heaven for them. And 6th should be a minimum for them. I don't see them finishing in the Champions League places. I just see them being too inconsistent overall. But they do have quite a good young team. And I wouldn't be majorly surprised if they finish 4th, but I just don't see it happening. 5th, we've got Man United. I still don't know what the identity of Man United is. It's a bit like Chelsea. They've obviously got players in that they don't want. And, the dressing room really counts for a lot. And the sort of team harmony and that togetherness. And if it's not there, it's not there and you can't fake it. And it doesn't really matter how good your players are sometimes. It's, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard sort of thing. And I think for Man United, they're not going to finish in the Champions League. They did well to do that last season. And last season, I predicted them to finish 2nd. I really thought they'd kick on. And I just don't see it happening. There's still a few moves away. They're still trying to make transfers. And it's the sort of thing where if they're getting players in like game week 3, that's going to take even more time to embed. Before you know it, it'll be at November time, and then you're looking at sort of making a run the next season. So for fourth place, I'm going with Newcastle. I know they had a bit of a dip last season. I think they'll get it together this season. Isak is, in contention to be Golden Boot winner in the Premier League, in my opinion. I think he could easily get 25 goals for Newcastle starting up front every week. And they've got quite a good squad. I think that Champions League spot is very realistic. Third, I'm going with Liverpool. Again, we don't quite know what we're going to get. I think people are rating Liverpool quite highly. I'm on the fence with them. I think they're definitely good enough to get Champions League. I would be majorly surprised if they didn't. I don't think they're anywhere near challenging for the title. And I think they've got players like Salah and Van Dijk who are coming to the end of the contract. They've got 1 year left. It's kind of going to be their farewell season. And they're really in that transition stage from the old era into the new era. And that's going to take some time. But I think getting Champions League football consistently during that time is a good achievement for them. Second, I'm actually going with Man City. Now, I had Man City to win the league last year, and they did win the league. It's so hard to do it consistently, and I think they're still waiting on players to come back. They've had a couple of departures as well. I'm not sure the squad depth is there, and eventually it does take its toll competing in final after final after final. And I think a lot of their players, someone like Kevin De Bruyne, he gets injured quite a lot. He's getting on a bit. I think they're not going to be able to sustain that forever. Eventually, they will, not win the league at some point. It will happen, and I think it's going to be this season where Arsenal will win the league. I think they've got enough experience. They've got enough big game experience. They play Man City quite early on, and I think that will really tell a lot as to how they do in that game. But for me, I think Arsenal will win the league this year. They're ready to take that step up. They've signed really good players that complement the squad quite well, and they've got that strength in depth. They know what they're doing, and I think it's their time. So let me know in the comments, if you've made it this far to the video, how you think I've done with my predictions. I think they're quite realistic, to be honest, but let me know if you think I've really, oversold someone or undersold a team. And, if you've got the time, comment your predictions in the comments as well. So, yeah, thank you very much for listening. Appreciate all the support on the channel. Hopefully we can keep it going into this new season. Look out for my final draft team. If you want to see my most recent draft, it will be on the screen right about now. And I will see you in the next one.